Pokémon is the highest grossing franchise of all time. But why is that? You'd think that a franchise with its roots in video games would make most of its money through said video games. After all, they are well regarded. At least the old ones are. But no, the Pokemon Company makes a majority of its profit through merchandise, which includes the trading card game that has been very popular with kids, collectors, and competitive players alike ever since the beginning of the Pokemania craze. People have always been searching for elusive cards with each set release, either for collecting or investing. But that got me thinking, what are the best cards in each set? Now, I'm not talking about rarity, price, or competitive viability. I want to focus on the artwork of the cards, which I think goes overlooked across the franchise. People will say a card is cool or beautiful, but I struggle to find an analysis of why these cards are highly praised. Of course, we've got to start from the beginning. I'm going to be going through the original base set of Pokemon cards and give my take on all the artworks. Art is inherently subjective, and I do have biases towards certain Pokemon, styles, and compositions, but that won't sway my opinion too much. With that being said, let me go over the criteria of which I will grade these cards. This review will be from a modern perspective, looking at the cards for what they are today. This is to show what cards still hold up as a testament to their design. Here are the three major categories, each being ranked out of 5: style, composition, and storytelling. Style is the simplest of the three categories. This takes into account elements such as line art, shading, or even how the Pokemon is modeled, as well as the style of the background elements. Composition is how the Pokemon is posed within the card space, how dynamic the pose is, and how it is incorporated into the environment. Lastly is storytelling. Does the overall art convey a short story reflective of the Pokemon and what it represents? Once these cards have been ranked out of a total of 15, I will average out the grade of all the cards in the set and give the whole set a final grade. With that being said, let's begin with the first card. First up is Alakazam. Starting with style, I love the early Ken Sugimori watercolor art. It gives off that childlike picture book vibe and really suits the franchise as a whole. That compliment applies to most Sugimori drawn cards in this set, even if they are just reusing his official key art from the original red and green Japanese games. When it comes to the composition, this is where a lot of early sets suffer. A lot of cards have the void problem. This is applicable to many of the holos where the Pokemon just stands in an empty space allocated by the holo pattern. Alakazam is no exception. Lastly, because Alakazam stands in a void, it struggles to tell any kind of story within the card. But if you look closer, you can actually see a light purple glow around Alakazam, indicating its use of psychic powers. 4.5 out of 15. Next up is Blastoise, and this is where I already start to repeat myself in this video. When it comes to style, the same praise I give to Ken Sugimori art applies to Blastoise as well. That also means the negatives are similar. The composition of Blastoise is extremely lackluster. Blastoise is another void Pokemon, and it is also just standing there, not much going on. Lastly, storytelling. It is somehow one of the most boring cards in the set, which is incredibly disappointing for a Pokemon like Blastoise. Like, it's not even using its signature cannons on its shell for anything. 4 out of 15. Next up is Chansey. To stop myself from repeating the same things over and over again, for the rest of the video, if I don't mention Sugimori's or another artist's style, or the void backgrounds, just know my sentiments are the same as the cards that come before it. That being said, Chansey is striking somewhat of a pose, with its hands together and a joyful expression, giving it some life. However, its pose doesn't convey a lot. It is said that Chansey can bring happiness to people, so the polite expression leads into that a little bit. 4.5 out of 15. Alright, now onto the biggest card in the set, Charizard. This is the first card in this set drawn by Mitsuhiro Arita. His style is also done in watercolor and manages to replicate Ken Sugimori's style very well with some slight differences in saturation, but still very children's picture book-like. Charizard is also the first Pokemon in this set to actually have a dynamic pose. I really like how hunched over it is, showing that its presence is so large that it can't normally fit within the card itself, which is very funny because even on the card, Charizard is described as 5'7". Charizard's stature lends itself into storytelling. Its hunched body and the flames bellowing from its mouth show this Charizard acting aggressively, which is, so far, much more interesting than anything else we've seen so far in base set. 8 out of 15. My thoughts on Clefairy are very close to those of Chansey's, but slightly worse than the lack of posing. 4.5 out of 15. Gyarados is the first card in this set which differentiates itself from the early watercolor art style. Arita doesn't try to replicate Sugimori's style this time and leans more into an oil pastel aesthetic, which leaves Gyarados looking a bit murky as it's not defined by clear outlines. Gyarados is a really long Pokemon, unlike Charizard, so it makes sense to bend its shape to fit into the composition space. However, some of its body is still cut off at the top, which makes it look cramped, and once again it's lost in the void, but this time it can barely be justified. You could imagine a creature like Gyarados residing in the deep sea, but because it contrasts so heavily in lighting, it sharply stands out from its environment. While bearing its gaping mouth, it's not as purposeful as it should be. 4 out of 15. Being an inspired fighting type, the posing comes more naturally at Hitmonchan, holding a solid defensive fighting stance. The posing really helps the audience understand Hitmonchan. That stance, with both gloves in front of the face protecting itself and one leg poised back, it is very clear it is either looking to either block an attack or throw out a forward jab. 6.5 out of 15. The same praises and criticisms I have for Hitmonchan apply to Machamp, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the stance. I like how it's flexing 2 of its arms while preparing the other 2, looking like it's about to grab you, but is so confident in itself it doesn't need half of its hands. 6.5 out of 15. Magneton is the first card in base set with art made by Keiji Kinabuchi. This early 3D modeling style of his works pretty well for simple Pokemon. Thankfully, Magneton is made out of very simple shapes. 3.5 out of 15. I really like how Sugimori drew Mewtwo in the early days of Pokemon, making it look very alien and uncanny by enlarging its head so that its neck brace, or second neck depending on how you interpret it, has a use. Like Alakazam, Mewtwo has a slight glow around him to accentuate his strong psychic powers. 4.5 out of 15. Not much to say about Nidoking that hasn't been said before. Once again, Sugimori does a really good job drawing Nidoking as a bulky monster. 4 out of 15. The only thing that I have to say for Ninetales is that it's posed well. Ninetales is posed elegantly to show off its main characteristic, its tails, sitting composed with its head to the side, coming off quite prideful, letting its mane flow in the wind. 5 out of 15. This Poliwrath card is a poor man's Machamp or Hitmonchan. I just wish it was posed a bit better. 4 out of 15. Raichu's pose is okay. It's cute, but it doesn't read well. Is it mid-jump, releasing some pent-up energy, or just happy to see you? 4 out of 15. So Venusaur is drawn by Mitsuhiro Arita in this set, and while I praise his Charizard, what happened here? Venusaur looks gross. Don't get me wrong, Venusaur is an ugly Pokemon, and I like that about him, but he looks like he has fleshy fat folds around his neck and ankles. While it usually has these folds, they're not normally exaggerated like they are in this card. Not to mention, the perspective of its tree is not aligning with its body. I understand Venusaur is an incredibly difficult Pokemon to draw. Even Ken Sugimori doesn't like drawing this Pokemon, and trying to cram that trunk and a giant flower into the card is really hard to do without making Venusaur smaller. 2.5 out of 15. I really like Zapdos's early art and how lively it feels. Its large, spiky, spread wings and stern expression make it look intimidating. Not to mention, similar to Alakazam and Mewtwo, Zapdos has bolts of electricity shooting from its body, giving a good impression of its strength as the legendary Lightning Bird. 5 out of 15. Finally, we get to a card with some kind of background. I think. You can tell there is something there, but it's really hard to make out what it wants to be. Is it a blurry shot of the sky obscured by trees? You could argue there's some foliage with tree trunks and water droplets, or is it some obscure X-ray image? Seeing as Beedrill is inspired by a bee, or even a wasp, I think that's a neat idea, but Beedrill is by no means the size of an actual bee. 2 interesting concepts, just with poor execution. 6.5 out of 15. Now this is a beautiful card, probably the best looking card in the set by far. Arita's more oil pastel style really makes this card pop with a whimsical feeling. The composition for this card is really impressive for early Pokemon cards. Dragonair front and center with its head and tail above the water, alone in a secluded area with ice caps in the background, and a beautiful aurora in the sky that reflects onto the water. It's simple, yet so effective. This card represents how Dragonair and its evolution line were perceived back then. Being the only dragon Pokemon, they were elusive and a rare sight. And it being secluded in a not so inhabitable climate, along with the also elusive sight of an aurora, speaks volumes to this rare Pokemon. The only complaint I have is that dragons are weak to ice, so it definitely is odd to put a dragon type in this environment. 11.5 out of 15. Kinabuchi is back with another 3D artwork. Unlike Magneton, this one hasn't aged as well because there's a bit more going on with the environment details and it looks rough. Not to mention that Dugtrio has some weird looking eyebrows. The composition is solid. I like the mountains and the fog in the background, along with the small rocks in the foreground, giving it even more depth. The plants look like generic filler objects and don't fit the earthy mountainous vibe. I really like the storytelling of this card. Dugtrio surfacing in the flower bed after tunneling, supposedly from those mountains, and using each of its heads to survey its surroundings, each looking in a different direction. 8.5 out of 15. And just when I thought we were getting somewhere with the past few cards, Electabuzz is another Sugimori style card in the void, and it has the same concept as Zapdos, but lazier. The expression isn't as menacing, and the bolt of lightning comes across the card instead of shooting out of the Pokemon. 4.5 out of 15. Another solid 3D piece from Kinabuchi. Electrode, being a ball-shaped Pokemon, is very easy to model. I wish he looked a bit more aggressive instead of giving me a somewhat smoldering look. I also like how colorful the card art is as well. While Electrode is in a void, at least it is in a colorful one that actually fits the Pokemon's identity. Electrode is one of, if not the explosion Pokemon. To me, this card shows a freeze frame from a huge explosion of energy. Electrode has a white smoky aura surrounding it, along with the massive burst of light and color in the entire card. I think it's supposed to be symbolic of the move explosion, otherwise the whole card would be grey smoke. 8 out of 15. Finally, the first Sugimori art with a Pokemon exists somewhere. Overall, this card is very whatever. Pidgeotto is standing in an ambiguous hill, and there's not much else. 6.5 out of 15. This Arcanine card is very similar to Pidgeotto's, but it's more fitting. It features Arcanine stepping through an open field, which represents its majestic stature well. However, Arcanine has a reputation for running, and that makes me wish they pushed that characteristic more and showed Arcanine sprinting through the fields instead. 7 out of 15. The artwork for Charmeleon is fine. The reader style is similar to Charizard's, but comes off a bit more awkward, which is fitting for a middle stage evolution. But the rest of this card doesn't know what it wants to be. First off, the Charmeleon is swiping at something. We can't see what it is, but we can infer there is something there because Charmeleon is looking off frame. But what is it even swiping at? There is no reach or lunge to the attack. It comes off as a hand wave, even with the inclusion of action lines. And the background, what is going on here? It can't decide between a lush forest, a cave, or a mountain. We are presented with big leaves upon which Charmeleon stands, but right behind it is a bright blue sky with both deep purple and bright orange rocks. 4.5 out of 15. Dugong floats gently below the surface of cold waters with icebergs in the background, very fitting of its typing. The bubbles are a nice subtle touch that make it appear as if Dugong crashed into the water from above, and as it settles, so do the bubbles. 8.5 out of 15. Unlike Dragonair, that basked in the elegance under an aurora, to me this Dratini card is quite sad. We see Dratini sitting alone across a barren iceland with the sun setting in the background. It looks lost, it might be the glare in its eyes, but it looks scared. It's becoming dark and it's alone. Unlike Dratini, who has beautiful lights in the night sky, the only thing awaiting this weak lone Dratini is the cold darkness of the night. 9 out of 15. This card looks like they blocked out the space for a background and then forgot to add the details. 4 out of 15. This Growlithe card is a worse version of the Arcanine in every way. The background isn't as detailed and the pose is boring. The biggest offender of this card is the perspective. Growlithe doesn't sit on the same perspective as the background, looking quite out of place. 5 out of 15. Another 3D render by Kinabuchi. I really like what he was going for, but unfortunately it hasn't aged that well. Haunter lunges forward towards the camera from a dark alleyway with one arm out in front. This is what you would see after a Haunter has been stalking you for a while and then you decide to turn around, getting that eerie feeling that something has been following you. The rendering of this card has some early 3D grain to it, which can work for and against the vibes of Haunter depending on how you view the card. I just wish the alleyway had some more details, maybe looked a bit more run down, thrown in a trash bin, maybe some posters. 7.5 out of 15. This Ivysaur card is solid, and I really like the pose. Ivysaur looks alert to something to its left, and is slightly stance for an oncoming threat, ready to turn its powerful plan towards it. The background could have been better. You can tell this is definitely a forest, but why is it so blurry and patchy in some areas? 7.5 out of 15. This one is personal. I don't like Jinx. It has always been a very controversial Pokemon throughout the history for multiple reasons, and it is just an odd Pokemon. You could tell me what your favorite Pokemon is, and 99% of the time, I can respect your taste. Jinx is in that 1%. That being said, why is there what appears to be an exploding supernova in the top right corner of this card? Probably just some random splotches of light, but it just does not fit at all. 2 out of 15. I know Kadabra has 3 fingers and it just has its palm open, but it looks like it's flipping you off. Regardless, similar to Alakazam, it has that purple aura around it, which is a nice touch. The posing looks like Kadabra is raising its arm to channel its psychic powers, which is also neat, but those red splotches in the background don't mean anything, so why are they there? 4.5 out of 15. This Kakuna's card shows itself going through metamorphosis while resting on a leaf. The oval of light and the rays sprouting outwards could possibly represent the energy bursting out of its cocoon in this freeze frame moment, but once again we see that early CGI grain showing this card's age. 6.5 out of 15. The pose from Machoke is cool, resembling that of a bodybuilder, flexing its huge muscles, but where is it in this frame? Not standing on solid ground, and what is that in the background? Is it a mountain? Because it kind of looks like a massive pile of shit. 5 out of 15. Similar to Gyarados, Arena uses oil pastels here, and it is executed much better. The camera is much closer to Magikarp, and some light outlines are enough to define its shape. We see Magikarp surface the water towards a fishing hook, unaware of its situation represented by those absent-looking eyes. Magikarp is often shown to be a dumb Pokemon, so this scenario is perfect for the carp. There is also some nice extra details, such as the reflections of plants and rocks in the water, and what looks to be a shore in the top right of the card. 10 out of 15. So Magmar is in hell, not sure how he got there, but in all seriousness, this is probably a volcano. You can kind of make out some rock formations near the top left of the art, but the background as a whole is incoherent. Magmar's pose is pretty bland too, he's just kind of standing there. A 5.5 out of 15. We see Nidorino walking towards the camera with a canyon behind him that forms a linear path. I do think the mountains are off in color. I'm not sure if they were trying to make them look burnt orange, similar to those of the Grand Canyon. Instead, they look kind of saturated, almost like a thermal scan. 8.5 out of 15. Unfortunately, Poliwhirl is not safe from the base set curse of putting Ken Sugimori art onto a vague background. 4 out of 15. Tamaoki Imakuni brings his own 3D rendered style. He really plays up the basic geometry of Porygon. It is the virtual Pokemon, so being in an environment made out of the same materials as itself is very meta, keeping the details very minimal and low poly. 8 out of 15. Oh come on. Just take some of the grass strands, put them in front of Raticate, and it would give it just that little bit extra. Just another poorly inserted Pokemon. 4.5 out of 15. At least Seal has the wave obscuring its tail. It's a nice touch, as I was mentioning with the Raticate card. It blends Seal into a more fitting environment, but it doesn't do much else beyond that. 5.5 out of 15. I like Wartortle's pose. It's confident. It looks like a kid playing in the beach enjoying itself. The water does look a bit too green. Apart from the colors being off, the perspective is also a bit wonky. The horizon line should be lower to accommodate from the front on perspective of how Wartortle is drawn. 6.5 out of 15. Abra resting against a tree is cute and fitting for a Pokemon that likes to hide away and be secluded. The saturated colors give the card a spiritual vibe, and there are some extra nice background details that elevate this card, such as the second tree, the low fluffy clouds, and the starry sky. 10 out of 15. This Bulbasaur card is cute, doing the downward dog stretch to angle its sprout in a colorful meadow. It appears to be pollinating the flowers, which is odd because Pollen Puff didn't exist at this time, and even now Bulbasaur cannot learn the move. 8 out of 15. Another bland Sugimori card. Not much to say, moving on. 4.5 out of 15. The way Charmander looks back with confusion and surprise after setting grass on fire with its flaming tail is very charming. The background is also solid with some rocks, mountains, and a yellow sunset sky. 9.5 out of 15. Similar to Dugtrio from earlier in this set, Diglett is also 3D modeled and set in a similar environment. However, because of the angle, we don't get that mountain range. It also has this fur texture that Dugtrio didn't, and it makes sense that it has fur because it's a mole Pokemon, but detailed textures like this did not render well back in the old day of technology. 5.5 out of 15. I appreciate the obvious Roadrunner reference. Even if Doduo resembles a lanky kiwi bird, this card has some nice details that really hone in on that reference, such as the dust clouds, speed lines, cacti, and orange rocks akin to those seen in the cartoon. 9.5 out of 15. Drowsy keeps up the psychic type quota of having a purple glow, and the background could be argued to look a little dreamlike, but it's just a messy swirl. 4.5 out of 15. Ghastly is very similar to Haunter, which is good. The dingy alleyway vibe comes off stronger in this card, however it's not as dynamic as the Haunter card, and the texturing in the background is let down by early 3D technology. Ghastly looks alright though. 6 out of 15. Coughing is doing what it does best, stinking up the place. I like how it looks really joyful as it releases its gas in what appears to be some type of underpass, judging from the brick arch formation. Arita also illustrates the gas very well using that sickly green color with hints of orange. 8.5 out of 15. A man who has become conscious of the absurd is forever bound to it. That is a quote from Sisyphus. So I guess Marchup has found the meaning to life. Like, this card is so surreal and gives me whiplash. There's so much that I love, but also find very uncanny. For starters, his proportions. Whack. That arm holding up the boulder is not only huge in muscle density, but looks to be longer than the other. Apart from that, the composition is really cool. Marchup stands up on the top of a mountain, and you can see this beautiful horizon behind him, as well as the curvature of the earth to emphasize the altitude of the composition. The holding of the boulder, at least 3 times its size, also plays into the evolution line's incredible strength. 9 out of 15. Magnemite is basically the same as Magneton, it just has a little bit more going for it with the lightning in the background. 4 out of 15. Metapod is supposed to be a boring Pokemon to show the mundane cocoon stage of metamorphosis, but that doesn't mean the card has to be boring as well. 4 out of 15. This Nidoran card does a good job of incorporating the original Sugimori art into the environment. They paint the image of Nidoran resting in an open field while keeping its eye out for its surroundings. 8.5 out of 15. Onix is similar to Machoke, where we can assume that to be a mountain in the background, but due to Onix floating in the space and the texturing of the environment, it just looks really awkward and unfinished. 4.5 out of 15. I like what this Pidgey card is going for with the low perspective and the sun glaring into the camera. However, the lighting on Pidgey doesn't match the darker lighting of the rest of the card. 6 out of 15. While this Pikachu card is cute with its pudgy proportions, the colors are off. Its brown accents have become pink, and while that may be from the light shining through the foliage as seen behind Pikachu, its yellow color remains unchanged. I quite like the composition of the background, the open treetops with light shining through and 2 diagonal tree trunks that guide the viewer's eyes towards Pikachu really accentuate it as the series mascot. 7.5 out of 15. Why does this Poliwag look so washed out and desaturated? It just looks sick. 3 out of 15. My thoughts on this Ponyta card are similar to Arcanine and Growlithe. The wide plains are serviceable for a horse Pokemon, so overall it's okay. 5 out of 15. Rattata bares its teeth with pride after gnawing on a tree branch. There's a lot of subtle detail in this card, like the second layer of bark underneath and the small sparkles on Rattata's teeth. What is confusing to me is this biome. The tree looks like it comes from a jungle with its squiggly branches and vines, but not that far off in the distance are mountain peaks. The red lighting of the sunset reflects with the branches nicely, but it doesn't off Rattata. 9 out of 15. Another Sugimori art in a nondescript rocky background. 4.5 out of 15. While I like that the composition, similar to Pikachu's where the environment converges to focus onto Squirtle, I'm not a fan of Arita's style here. Squirtle looks too green and alien-like, and I'm not sure what he's standing on. It might be some kind of coral with the bright colors. The red outline makes it look like magma instead. I do like Squirtle's playfulness, and it's nice to see Pokemon use the attacks listed on their card. 6.5 out of 15. Another charming early 3D Pokemon card. Once again, Starmie being a very geometrical Pokemon lends itself to the low poly art style. The background, while simple, it's a nice touch. The beam of light and the bubbles are enough to indicate a body of water. 5.5 out of 15. Staryu is more or less the same as Starmie, but the sand texture and lack of other shells apart from the 2 present definitely age the card. 5 out of 15. While Tangela is often known for using its own vines to grab and ensnare others, it's really charming to see itself caught up in a thicket with its legs hanging. While Tangela's expression hasn't changed from its usual, it still looks bewildered. Arita also does a good job with the coloring, distinguishing Tangela from the more vibrant greens and yellows. 10 out of 15. Kinabuchi's Voltor model is a lot better than his Electro. That being said, the background has taken a step back from exploding bright colors into something a lot more subtle. While this card is a void card, it uses that to its best effect by contrasting bright yellow, pink, and cyan electric currents running across the card, allowing it to have some contrast. 4.5 out of 15. The background of this card is confusing. I tried looking around the internet to see if there was any correlation between Sparkles and Kitsune, but I couldn't find anything, so it's just another Sugimori Void art card. 4 out of 15. Our last Pokemon of the set, and we're ending on a high note. I think this Weedle card is adorable. I really like the perspective foreshortening of Weedle climbing along a tiny branch towards the camera and how big its head looks. It has some nice background elements as well, such as the wall of vines and the light shining through. 9 out of 15. Now we move on to the trainer cards, starting with the Clefairy doll. Kinabuchi's low poly style conveys that this is supposed to be a stuffed toy with its round edges. The carpet is nice, looking like a kid's playmat, but the yellow background sorely sticks out. 6 out of 15. Another 3D model by Kinabuchi, and it's a 90s interpretation of a futuristic home computer, which is also reinforced by those green data lines often seen in sci-fi fiction at the time, like The Matrix. However, this is less hacking into the mainframe and more just high-speed computing. 5.5 out of 15. What an overly ominous card. The black and red background makes the de-evolution spray look more virulent than it actually is. Maybe Pokemon de-evolution is actually painful. Also, the spray bottle doesn't look like the other sprays found in the Pokemon series, but instead looks like a banana that curved back into itself. 2 out of 15. Imposter Professor Oak is the first character we've seen that originated from the TCG. He has a very crude design, looking like some kids Sonic OC, where they take the base character and add scars, spikes, and other edgy features. The shadow could imply perhaps something sinister controlling this vessel, and having him in front of a concrete wall kinda represents a mugshot a bit. 3 out of 15. For a contraption supposed to locate items, it looks a bit extreme. You'd think it would be a small handheld device like it is in later generations of Pokemon, but because this design is not a TCG original, I don't have much else to say about the image. 2 out of 15. This artwork for Lass was made brand new for the TCG, which is nice. The pose makes her look determined, but that's about it. It would be nice to have her standing somewhere that isn't the Rainbow Paddle Pop dimension. 2.5 out of 15. Back in Generation 1, the breeder trainer class didn't exist, but according to the Japanese name of this card, this guy is actually the daycare attendant. This is a new character design, as there was no previous key art that could be used instead. I like the relaxed nature of the breeder, pose slung over the shoulder, standing amongst expansive fields, but that's where I'm also confused. This guy gives off the impression of a farmer. He even has the singlet tucked into his pants, which are tucked into his boots, and also has a straw hat. 4.5 out of 15. So this guy is Dux. He's the guy that trades you the Farfetch'd in the Gen 1 games. This is another original design. The casual suit and hat gives off the impression of a businessman, which can imply that day trading is his whole shtick, but instead of day trading stocks, he trades Pokemon all day. The Farfetch'd art is new, and he's just kind of doing nothing, so there's nothing to note. 3 out of 15. I love how goofy Scoop Up looks. The Pokeball is dragging Weedle towards it, and Weedle is either startled or fighting for its life. The motion blur gives a sense of speed, and the energy lines help clarify the action. I love Weedle's wide-eyed expression, however there is an error where only one eye is enlarged. 6 out of 15. Yep, this is certainly a swirl of energy. What else do you want me to say? It all converges into a blinding horizon, and that's kinda cool, I guess. 4.5 out of 15. Defender is the X-Defense item from the games, but this just looks sloppy. The text on the pill is not only super basic, but it's like a poor Photoshop that doesn't even need to be there. The X items are all categorized by their color, and even if that's not enough, the card title and description give you plenty of information. The background lines are also a cute bit of context, suggesting that the blue line has strengthened its defenses as the white line bounces off of it. 4.5 out of 15. The abstract nature of this art makes it more interesting than Super Energy. That green circle and star seem to be harvesting the energy of those red orbs in the dark purple capsule and then dispersing it outwards. 6 out of 15. Full heal looks a lot different to how it does now. I prefer the spray bottles. For a kid's game, dousing a Pokemon with a light spray seems a lot more appropriate than injecting them with a needle. Props to this card for doing that anime trope of making the sharp point extra sparkly. 2.5 out of 15. This is a very original take on the concept of Pokeballs. We know they are man-made, and we've seen them fail throughout the series, but I don't remember ever seeing repairs or upkeep to make sure they are working properly. The little arms are definitely a bit old though, bit of their time. 3.5 out of 15. Once again, we have another X item, with this one being the X attack. It has the same issue with the text on the capsule like I said before. The line represents the effect, and this time the red line is piercing the white line. 4.5 out of 15. It's cool to see the Pokemon Center healing machines detailed in this card art. The slots being labeled and the energy bars are a nice touch, but what's most interesting about this card is the in-universe company Life Force Inc. They seem to be the manufacturers of the machine and have even labeled it as Mark 1. We know of other in-universe companies such as the Devon Corp and Macrocosmos conglomerate, so it's a shame to have this bit of trivia lost to time. 6.5 out of 15. That is the Pokeflute design ripped straight from the games. Seems to be placed on some kind of marble slab, and that's all there is to it. 3.5 out of 15. Once again, that is the Pokedex design from Gen 1 on some kind of slab. The screenshot of the in-game Pokedex is cool though. 3.5 out of 15. This Professor Oak card, like many in this set, is the stock art placed into an extremely dull background. Out of all the locations to put Professor Oak, why not a lab? 4.5 out of 15. It's weird seeing a pink revive instead of the usual yellow, not to mention it's actually a max revive because of the star shape. The glowing lines add some flavor, but both those and the pink revives contrast poorly against the orange background. This card gives off the vibe of one of those you would find in a fake pack today. 2 out of 15. The bright orange lines sprouting from the background really make this look like an advertisement for the super potion. The low angle helps it make it look more glorious than a super potion has any right being. The design of the bottle is what you would find in the games, with the addition of the Pokeball logo and some red text on the side that I can't make out. If any of you can read it, please let me know in the comments. 6 out of 15. Once again, I ask with Bill, where is his lab? This card also has 2 errors in it. They didn't remove the white background from his arm in the official key art, and his body cuts off just below the chest, so you can see a very small gap. 3.5 out of 15. This is just the super energy removal but duller. 3.5 out of 15. Very similar to Scoop Up, this is another art of Weedle in distress. It even has the same error with the eye. It is definitely the same model but posed slightly differently. I don't like this card as much compared to Scoop Up because we don't see where Weedle is going, and being blown by a gust of wind is less humorous than being sucked into a Pokeball against its will. 5.5 out of 15. This is the same model of the super potion, but obviously in the palette of a regular one. One difference is that the English text has been removed. I still don't know what the Japanese text says as it wraps around the bottle and is obfuscated. The background is also not as appealing as it doesn't lean into that bright flash marketing aesthetic like the super potion had. 3.5 out of 15. The art for Switch is just a representation of trading from the games. Kakuna and Magnemite are passing each other, moving along red and blue lines with Pokeballs opening up to reveal the mons inside. 6 out of 15. While the energy from the TCG shares similar types from the games, I'm going to lightning round these cards. For base set, I'll judge them on how well the icons and color represent the element, and then going forward, I will judge the design of all future energy cards with base set as a point of reference. Regular energy cards will not be scored or count towards the final score of the set. Let's begin. The light gray color of colorless energy fits with the vibe of normal and even some flying types, but I think the star is an odd choice. Why not a black plain circle instead? The brownish orange color encompasses the 3 types of fighting, ground, and rock. The fist that also looks like jagged rocks is a perfect symbol. It is red and a flame. Impossible to screw up. Obviously grass is green. The symbol covers its bases of foliage with a leaf silhouette, but also includes the structure of a stem of grass, and many bugs are known for consuming plant products. Quick note, I forgot to mention that the poison type is also included. It makes sense because, nature includes poisonous things like berries and other toxins. I'm just used to the modern day where it's lumped in with a psychic instead. Another super obvious one, yellow and a lightning bolt. Purple is another obvious choice, and the eye symbol is a good reference for opening the third eye, linking to psychic or spiritual powers. Both water and ice are often associated with blue. Ice is just frozen water, and a droplet is a good choice for the symbol. Now that the lightning round is over, here are the final results. The average score of this set is 5.54 out of 15, giving it a percentage of 36.9%. Pretty poor score overall, but a lot of points were lost from cards with absent environments. The cards with the lowest score were Jinx, De-Evolution Spray, Revive, and Item Finder, with a pitiful score of 2 out of 15. And the highest scoring card, with a score of 11.5 out of 15, was Dragonair. I think this art is super underrated and has a lot of the qualities I look for in Pokemon art. Mitsuhiro Arita did an amazing job capturing the allure of Gen 1 Dragonair. Let me know what your favorite card is from this set. Leave a comment. And if I missed any details, please let me know for the future. I appreciate your time. Subscribe, and I'll see you later.